It's March Madness in MMA. Win, you're in. Lose, you go home. Maraenui. It's no longer smoking. Shane Jung is going to be taking on Fly Gabriel Miranda. For Miranda, a return back down to featherweight after a 3-knockdown foray against Benoit Saint-Denis in his UFC debut. Miranda, a year removed from that loss back in Paris, and he switched camps. That's always a good thing, right? Miranda now representing Asher Fight Team in his native Brazil, most recently out of MMA Masters. And I'll throw some videos up there and pictures. But Miranda, still wearing those MMA Masters trunks at his new gym. It's like having a sweater from an old girlfriend. To be fair, though,
in Miranda's defense, at least that last loss does age quite well.
Yeah, it's a giant apologist leap if you're going to say that. Because for Gabriel Miranda...
Well, it's the truth. But we'll say that he's a really good fighter.
Yeah, we had a lot of things to say about Miranda before that UFC debut. It was a fun rewatch on the fights for Gabriel Miranda. Now, the first thing I'm going to show up there is the fact that for Gabriel Miranda, if you look at his last fight and you just click on the event, it was... what was it? It was Face the Danger number 23. He took on a fighter that was 5-5, and Matt's having a problem with his eye.
I don't know what's going on right now, but I cannot stop tearing up my left eye. I'm professional, though, so we can keep going.
And for the audio podcast listeners, they've really been thrown for a loop. But if you click on Gabriel Miranda's last fight against one Diego Squierra, if you click on Face the Danger 23, I'll say it one more time. It says right at the top, a prompt from Tapology. This promotion has been flagged by Tapology. Promotion pattern of record padding and mismatches. Unless further evidence emerges regarding the legitimacy of this organization's event, any new bouts to this promotion will be similarly flagged, as will the Tapology records.
You're telling me Face the Danger isn't on the up and up?
I'm just telling you that. Gabriel Miranda, I'm very excited about him. You look at his record, he's 16-5, 15 of his fights by submission. This guy is, of course, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and if you go back and watch his fights, he is super slippery on the mat. It doesn't matter who he's fighting. It could be Joe from the grocery store. It could be Benoit Saint-Denis.
Could be.
He really does put it all out on the line. His striking, he just walks forward and throws the kitchen sink at his opponents. He does a lot of body lock trip takedowns, which work more in women's MMA than they do in men's MMA at the highest level. But you catch my drift. Gabriel Miranda is a very interesting fighter. He can get held down on the mat. He can struggle in certain positions. He is very, very slippery, though. But my God, has he taken on a paltry level of competition on the regional scene.
He certainly has. I agree. His grappling does look phenomenal on the regional scene, but it's really easy to out-grapple guys who are 3-1, 0-0, 5-5. Like, those are the types of people we expect you to beat if you are eventually going to become a UFC-level fighter. It's like, for Miranda, he does leave massive openings when he does try to strike. So, let's say you ever fought somebody like Jalen Turner fights in this weight class, for instance. I know he's like a ranked fighter, but still, Jalen Turner would hit him 3 times and put him down from like 6 feet away, just because that's the type of fighter he is.
So it's really funny because, Matt, you said that Jalen Turner, if Miranda ever fought Jalen Turner at 155, 3 punches would probably equal 3 knockdowns. But for Gabriel Miranda, 3 shots equal 3 knockdowns against Benoit Saint-Denis, and I don't disagree. Saint-Denis is a very good fighter, and Gabriel Miranda beat some of the worst competition on the planet Earth when he was coming into the UFC. Again, 1 knockout and 15 submission wins on the way. Those are definitely good. And when you look at Miranda, he was fishing for the submissions against Saint-Denis, who wasn't fooled. Now, that's a Saint-Denis that took down Thiago Moises and was looking for submissions and ground and pound. But when you look at a guy like Miranda, a good opportunity here against a smaller fighter in Shane Jung. And if you look at Jung, he's looking for his first win since 2019? He's 4 years and 7 months removed from his wild fight against Austen Arnett, where in the closing seconds, he lands that right hook that drops Austen Arnett like a sack of potatoes, and they think the fight's over, but that's just the end of the fight, period. It was the end of the 3rd round. For Jung, his last 3, Ludwig Klein, we knew him for sidewinding head kicks. Well, he finished Shane Jung with one of those.
He certainly did.
Jung took on Omar Morales. He was on the wrong end of a decision there, and Jung's last time out, it was back home, UFC 284, or at least close to home. It was in Australia, not New Zealand. But he loses that one to Builder, who was able to strike on the outside and work in some of his wrestling and his control.
And that's been the thing with Shane Jung. It's not that he always just blew the doors off strikers because that's how good his own striking is, but for the most part, he would be able to beat a lot of primary strikers. But in the last 3 fights, I don't want to say his opponents have a lack of respect for him, but they don't seem to respect the power nearly as much, and we have seen him moving backwards a lot more than we ever did on his way up to the UFC or in those first few fights. Like, when Jung is at his best, it's almost like a Jai Herbert fight, right? Like, he's not going to win all of them, but they are going to be exciting if he is able to do what he wants to. He's going to move forward, use a lot of his own big power shots. But with Jung, he has been just more welcoming to backing up in the fights, and that's what I'm worried about. It's a little bit Now, Volk and Oostemir looked great last week, don't get me wrong. But for Jung, it does come down to if he's the one leading the dance, if he's the one being confident moving forward, then I do think he could go out there and completely destroy Miranda on the feet, because that's the kind of power Jung does have when he has that confident kind of stance with him. But if he is just lackluster, being on the back foot, just taking whatever Miranda gives him, then I do think Miranda, for all of the negatives there are, and you're right, did he fight a high level of competition on the way up to the UFC? No, not at all.
The worst.
Yeah, like a scout out there would put it at like a D- probably, if they were being respectful. But for Miranda, the way that he was beating a lot of those guys, that granted he should have been beating on the way up, he does have a great submission ability. He does have a lot of variety to his submissions too, and I do think that if he's able to get Shane Jung on the ground, especially if he's able to evade some of those bigger shots, he could get the win in this fight. But this is the big issue I have with the matchup. Shane Jung may not have been looking great as of late, right? He stumbled more than he's triumphed. But I still think the worst version of Shane Jung is still as good as one of the better versions of Miranda. And maybe that's a step too far to say, because Miranda there's a good fighter locked away in there somewhere, right? Like if the fight follows his idea perfectly, he can score a beautiful submission win. I just think Shane Jung, and you're going to hate the term, he got that dog in him, for better or for worse. And I do think he's going to make Gabriel Miranda face adversity in the matchup.
We know Shane Jung has that because he gets hit and tagged
like in a large
majority of his fights. And they don't get to 13-7 without kind of withstanding a little bit of adversity. 2-4 in the UFC is Shane Jung. Debuted against Alexander Volkanovski in their respective debuts. Loses that one by decision. Has a fight of the night, second round knockout with his big elbow against boxing's own Rolando D. His dad boxed. His dad, bad guy. But when you look at it for Shane Jung, a bad level of competition on the regional scene that he beat. But he also lost to Damian Brown and Guan Wong, who came into the UFC, dropped Alex Caceres 1-1 fight, and then rode off into the sunset. A great what-if in MMA lore, just like Manny Bermudez, but he couldn't make the weight anymore. But when we look at a matchup like this, Matt, the safe pick, this is going to sound counterintuitive, is a guy who's lost 3 fights in a row. He's favored to win it. That's Shane Jung. We have a look at the Tapology votes in this one, Matt. I love to see what the fans are thinking. I'm going to say over under 65% for Shane Jung in the fight.
I think it'll be over.
He's going to be over ever so slightly.
It's the other way.
Wow. 945 total votes. 69% Gabriel Miranda. 29% by decision. 59% by submission for the 31% that have Jung. 73% by decision. So, Matt, Gabriel Miranda, last fight, Saint Denis, in tight. He got hit.
He did.
And that could be what happens against Shane Jung. But I did say, again, the safe pick feels like Jung, 65% takedown defense in the UFC. It's bent, it's broken a bit. But when you look at this fight, Matt, what's the pick in the fight?
The fact that I'm about to pick a guy who's been, on a 3-fight losing streak, this is the crazy thing, and this is why odds makers kind of know what they're doing. If you just look at Gabriel Miranda's record, you're like, wow, 16-6, he's probably a really good fighter. There's a guy in a 3-fight losing streak who's almost a 2-1 favorite over him. I've got Shane Jung in the matchup.
Matt, you should never let odds dictate the pick.
I'm just saying, isn't that wild? You would never see that in other weight classes where a guy is on a 3-fight losing streak fighting somebody who has a really shiny record, but that guy's still the favorite just because of his experience.
I mean, even though Gabriel Miranda's last win is over, as I pronounced it, Diego Squieria, a guy who's 5-5 on a record, a promotion that was flagged by Tapology for being shady, I will go Shane Jung ever so slightly. Again, I think range is going to be dictated by Jung in this one. If Miranda's able to kind of go out there, play the Ryan Hall, BJ Penn, and Minari role game, we'll see how it plays out for Miranda. But for me, I'm going to go with Shane Jung. We're going to get torched in the comments because the fans over on Tapology have Miranda, and you folks probably do as well. But go back and watch some of the tape on these two guys. I'd be interested to get your thoughts on it. Nonetheless, some big-time fights on this card. Matt, a lot of Anzac fighters represented, so you're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say. Let's get into it.